The Broken Blueprint, Part 3, Significant Statements. 1944, L. E. Froome editorial. In 1944, another church leader deplored the situation with what had happened to our colleges as a result of their linkage to Loma Linda. How dare a man contemplate or have the temerity to present the degree of Doctor of Divinity gained in the universities of Babylon as a credential for teaching or preaching this threefold message, the second stipulation of which Babylon is fallen, come out of her, my people. How dare we accept such a Babylonian credential in lieu of mastery of the truth? Shall a man go into Babylon to gain strength and wisdom to call men out of Babylon? To ask the question is but to disclose how far some have compromised with Babylon, as they have gone back to Babylon to drink from her wells of wisdom. Oh, for the living waters of truth fresh from the word. Someone needs to sound an alarm. We need to grip ourselves and halt a growing trend that, if it becomes entrenched, will bring disaster through our message. We need to give ourselves to the study of the Word until we are again known preeminently for our mastery and sound exposition of Scripture. Otherwise, we shall go the way of all other religious bodies before us, who started out with a heavenly message, but who have bogged down in the morass of worldly scholarship with its erudite haziness, its loss of spiritual vision, and its blurring of truth, until its virility and its power to witness have virtually disappeared. Leroy Edwin Froome, editor, Ministry Magazine, editorial, April 1944. 1959. Stratemeyer discovers the blueprint. What happens when a leading non-Adventist educator in America discovers the blueprint? At a meeting of Adventist educators, Dr. Stratemeyer of the Educational Department of Columbia University was asked to talk to the group. To them, she said, "This is an amazing book." Dr. Stratemeyer examined in her dignified but forceful manner. "And to think that Mrs. White finished only 3 grades of schooling. If you follow her philosophy of education as outlined in this book," she continued, holding up education, "you must teach a child to know why he acts as he acts. He must learn how to think, how to reason for himself." Again and again, Dr. Stratemeyer remarked on how remarkable it was that an unschooled woman could write as Mrs. White wrote. Current educational developments demonstrated how Mrs. White was more than 50 years ahead of her time. The breadth and depth of its philosophy amazes me. Its concepts of balanced education, harmonious development, and of thinking and acting on principles are advanced educational concepts. It is this harmonious development that is so greatly needed, yet so greatly neglected today. I am not surprised that members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church hold the writings of Mrs. White in great respect and make them central in developing the educational programs in their schools. Dr. Florence Stratemeyer, quoted by Raymond Moore, Review, August 6, 1959. Oh, that we were doing that. A. W. Spalding writes, W. E. Straw, in his review of our educational work, quotes a letter of A. W. Spalding to a vice president of the General Conference. "I have had the privilege of long connection with and experience in and out of our schools, and I have, through all this half-century and more, been a student of the educational principles and structure and processes which God has given through the instrumentality of Ellen G. White. I have perceived in her writings not merely aphoristic maxims to disgrace dissertations on religion and learning, but rather a deeply conceived, well-integrated system of education, embracing philosophy, range, form, content, method, and above all, spirit. These writings constitute a blueprint which, alas, our history shows has been little read, less understood, not at all comprehended. We need now to begin all over again. Reforms must be entered into with heart and soul and will. If there is not in some respects an education of an altogether different character from that which has been carried on in some of our schools, we need not to have gone to the expense of purchasing lands and erecting school buildings. A. W. Spalding, quoted in W. E. Straw, Rural Sociology and Adventist Education History, 1961. 1956. The Secret GC Questionnaire. During part of the time that the present writer attended our seminary, located at that time in Northwest Washington, D.C., next to the General Conference and the Review, he worked as a night janitor at our world headquarters. One night, in the winter of 1956 to 1957, the present writer was emptying waste baskets on one floor of the building when he found a note on top of one basket. Burn this. The request was redundant since all the paper was dumped into the outside incinerator, along with scrap paper from the seminary and review, and burned the next morning. But the urgency of the note attracted my attention, so I pulled everything out of the waste basket and briefly examined it. There before me was a stack of sheets, perhaps 3.5 inches thick. They were questionnaires. Burn it was the request. Apparently, it was a secret poll, for I never later read about it in the review or heard anything relating to it at the seminary. The stapled 8.5 by 11 sheets, about 100 of them, had probably been sent to a variety of church leaders throughout the world field. Each questionnaire consisted of about 3 pages of typewritten, single-column questions with a triple space after each question for a brief handwritten reply. Every questionnaire had handwritten replies to every question. All were unsigned. The point of the questions was this: should we keep CME? It would be several years before its name was changed to LLU. Should we continue to support it? Is the money spent on it worth the cost? If you are in a mission field, is your area being helped by Loma Linda or its graduates? I spent about half an hour looking at the questionnaires and then hauled the lot to the incinerator. Because the answers were all about the same, I saw no reason to read them all. I did not see one positive statement on any that I examined. The consensus was that we should stop subsidizing Loma Linda and, if necessary, just close it down. Some were adamant that this be done. Other replies agonized over the matter, yet felt the situation was apparently hopeless. Back in those days, one of the 52 world offerings each year went to the support of Loma Linda. This is a lot of money. We now have the world budget, and a percentage of all the offerings and part of the tithe is sent to keep Loma Linda afloat and help pay the salaries of its Adventist and non-Adventist workers and chaplains. Obviously, a large percentage of church offerings from around the world are earmarked each year for Loma Linda. We are still supporting Loma Linda, so apparently the brethren decided that it was best to just burn the questionnaires. Perhaps too many influential people, including physicians, would be upset if the annual funding stopped. 1961 statement by W.E. Straw. Practical is a key word. What happens when governmental leaders see the results of our adherence to the blueprint? Walter E. Straw, 1880 to 1962, wrote, "When I was in Africa trying to carry out that system, perhaps in only a partial way, the government of Rhodesia appointed a committee to inspect the schools in that territory. When they came to Solusi Mission and observed the work and classes in agriculture, sewing, and construction, the chairman of the committee said, 'That is just what the natives need. Why can't the other missions do that?' I replied, 'Because they've got a liberal arts education, and our men got practical work in school.' Then he said, 'You ought to go and show the others how to do it the way it ought to be done.'" W.E. Straw, Rural Sociology and Adventist Education History, 1961. Straw spent 52 years in Adventist educational work.